Hey, Shankar.
Yes, sir.
Now, co-host.
Yeah, can you put me as the co-host also, please?
Shankar, Mr. Nandu Kishore also one of the speakers today.
Sir, you are the co-host, sir. One sec, sir.
Yeah, I was, but then there was a power cut here, so I lost connectivity.
Okay. Now done, sir. The live streaming also started, sir.
Yeah, so I have now reconnected on 4G, so it's from a different place in the house, and so I changed my background also. Sorry about that.
Yes, sir. We've gone to the mountains now.
Okay,
now I've gone to the mountains.
This is Alps, yeah.
Yeah.
And would you like to share screen? Would you like to try it out? But no issue. But would you
no issue. It will work. It will work now. Yeah.
Perfect, sir.
Something is happening to Nandu's video.
Yeah, it's okay now.
No, you are still jumping.
Yeah, because my screen is not stable. I'm working off 4G on I'm holding it in my hand. Because there's a power cut here. When I called the electricity department, they said the electricity is out for the next 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
So this is Indian Jugaad. I've kind of gone to a different place where the lights are, we have a backup light supply, and so 4G.
Inverter you got. Okay.
What you
inverter.
Speak is important than whether you speak jumping up or sitting down. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
I do not care. I mean, what you are talking is more important. These things will happen. So.
Balraman, shall we start?
Yeah, let's start.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, very warm welcome to another edition of our evening talk. Again, an interesting subject, which is I never heard of somebody discussing on this subject. So many people I met, I organized more than a couple of thousand in MMA. This is the first time on this subject we are doing, that is reinventing yourself, starting in your 50s for a productive post-formal retirement life. But however, I know while in service, people who retire, we pick them up and send them for a course for their resettlement. But this is happening for a civil services where there are a number of initiatives which are going to happen. Maybe Mr. Balraman will tell you what we are planning to do post-event. We are already working on that, a number of initiatives which will really help large veterans, a large number of people who have got more than 30 to 40 years of experience, who can really contribute continuously to the society. That is what is our objective. Before I'll take 2-3 minutes just to tell you what's happening, because we have got some outstanding Ponds veteran going to be speaking till end of 31st July. Next 2-3 more, I will take a few moments to tell so that you mark in your diary, because so many Ponds veterans are joining. So many guests have come. In case you would like to watch this program, do note these dates and be there on time, the same time. Saturday 18th at 6 p.m. We have got Anand Kripalu, MD and CEO of DHGO and member of DHGO Global. He is going to be talking on Let Us Speak Serious as my leadership journey and key lessons from Ponds to leading 3 kinds of different businesses. Having known Mr. Anand Kripalu, it will be a great evening. One of the finest speakers, not to be missed event again. Please mark your diary. Saturday the 18th at 6 p.m. Same time. And all the login IDs are same, except the Zoom will be different. We'll share with you soon. Then on Saturday, the 25th, we have Satyanarayana Ramamurthy. He is the partner, head of infrastructure, KPMG from Singapore. He's going to be talking to us on the Leaders Speak series of Ponds Veterans Fragrance of Business, leadership lessons from working in partnership environment. Maybe in the present environment and pandemic, I think partnership is the order of the day, where you can achieve great success with your partner and collaborate with people actually. And on the Friday, the 31st, the last program for this month, that is on the brand value management series. On the talk will be on the governance, where Shailesh Haribhakti, Chartered Accountant, Board and Audit Committee of Chair, Independent Directors, Evangelists, and one of the known known person in the field of Chartered Accountancy, and Shailesh Haribhakti, and he'll be going to be talking to us on governance. This we are doing jointly with Equator. And Jude, Ramesh Jude from Ecuador will be joining us. We'll be in conversation with him. Besides that, we have a number of other charts. Today also, we had a couple of events in the morning. This is a major event which we do not want you to miss. Once again, I want to thank all the viewers, members who are joining this program live on YouTube, Facebook, and webinar. Thanks so much. You joined us for the first MMA AGM, which was conducted online. It's in history. We have set the thing, and many of the company, many of the organizations are going to follow us. We are the first one to do an AGM on online. Though corporate board has permitted, many corporates are doing it in a not-for-profit organization, where we have done it within the stipulated time, online as scheduled. This 10th of July was scheduled a year back for us, and stick to that. And thanks for the overwhelming responses today. And it was a great AGM, and thanks so much once again. Coming to today's event, reinventing yourself, starting in your 50s and for productive and post-formal retirement life. We got three outstanding veterans who are going to be talking to us. I will call them veterans because they are the one who have done service and now joined the retired life, continue to contribute significantly to the society. Mr. V. Balraman, former managing director of Ponce India Limited, is also the past president of MMA. I always say, every time I'll say that he's my mentor. He's a great advisor to MMA today. We are able to do so many initiatives is based on his advice, and is really get to know him, and his support is a great value to MMA. Then Lakshmi Narayan Pandit, founder and chief executive, Pinnacle Leadership Consulting, and former managing director of SHL Limited, and he'll be joining us and sharing his experience and putting his thoughts on what's the way forward for what you are planning in retirement life. And you all, Nandu Kishore doesn't need introduction. You all know him very well. Professor of Indian School of Business, guest lecturer at London Business School, former executive vice president, head of Asia, Africa, and Oceania, Nestle, Switzerland. Ladies and gentlemen, now I'm not going to introduce the speakers in detail because this is a story where the speakers are going to talk about themselves, how they transited from their corporate life, high-profile corporate life, to the life what they have settled down, and how they are continues to contribute to the society in their own way. And I requested each of the speaker to introduce yourself so that it set the context very correctly. Now I will hand it over to Mr. Balraman to please set the context, introduce. Over to you, Mr. Balraman.
Good evening. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So talking to you about reinventing yourself for a productive post-formal retirement life. My mind goes back several years. It was probably 2002 or 2003, the year 2002 or 2003, and it was the city of Bombay, and the scene was in the Taj Intercontinental Hotel. In their huge ballroom. It was the evening, and it was a huge function, a farewell function for the chairman of a very, very large Indian company, a multinational. And it was his retirement day, and the company, about 1,500 people from all over India and nearby nations, because he was also holding a position for South Asia. They had all assembled with their wives. And it was a phenomenal party, a large number of speakers with the music program that the chairman used to love. And a number of speakers paid eulogies, and they all talked about what a great person he was, and what great contributions he had made in various fields, both in the company and outside. And many recalled his early mentorship of them. And the evening wore on, and the company gave him a huge apartment as a retirement gift. And the evening went on, and at about, it ended finally at 2 a.m. the next morning. And as the dinner concluded, the retiring chairman and his wife took leave of everyone, and they started walking towards the entrance to the Taj. And we all walked behind him, and many rushed to hold the rear doors of his car, one for his wife and one for him, and they both got in and kept waving to us, and we kept waving as they went away. This was sometime in early February, I think. And then a week later, I met the same gentleman in Taj Coromandel, Chennai. He had come down to attend a board meeting. He was a director in another board in Chennai. And I was talking to him. We were standing in the corridor of Taj. And someone walked by, and that gentleman recognized both. Shall we call this gentleman Mr. Ramachandran? Actually, that is not his name, but I have to use a pseudonym in order to. This is a real story that happened, but I'm using a false name just to hide the true identity of the person, to avoid embarrassment. So this gentleman who passed us talking, he stopped, he recognized this retired chairman. he came and talked to both of us and then said to the retired chairman that it's very, very important that he comes and addresses the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India annual function scheduled in Chennai some 4 to 5 weeks later. This retired chairman, Mr. Ramachandran's reaction was totally unexpected. He suddenly got angry. He said, but I am already retired, as you know. Unless you fly me down and unless you book a hotel for me, I cannot come. Now, that is the truth of the issue. However, why did he get annoyed and what was he angry about? This incident had not faded from my mind. This had remained in my mind because he was getting upset because the fact that he had retired hurt him a lot, I think. I mean, earlier when he was chairman of that company, he used to fly wherever he wanted and stay wherever he wanted. He used to combine official work with all, making speeches at these various functions. Now, for the first time, he's no longer the chairman of that company. So he no longer has the ability to fly on at the company's expense, stay at the company's expense. He doesn't have the use of his 3 secretaries, nor 2 drivers, nor the executive manager who used to be his assistant. Now, very, very clearly, Mr. Ramachandran had not planned for his retirement. I mean, he certainly knew that he was going to retire when he's 60. That was company policy. His predecessors had retired at 60. So why was he not prepared? Why did retirement catch him by surprise? Why was the fact that he does not have the same perquisites of his office such a shock to him? Why was he so uncomfortable with this fact? Why did he not prepare himself for it? Mentally, physically, I kept thinking about that. Talking about this, I must say that this does not happen to everybody. There are people who calmly think about the future, who want to leave a job. I mean, there are people who think about, okay, this is enough. Let me retire. And let me invite one such person, Mr. Venkatraman, M. Venkatraman, who used to work with me in Bonds. Can you, Mr. Venkatraman, can you explain how you prepared for your retirement? You seem to have organized it pretty well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Balraman. Can you see me and hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I am Venkatraman. I was the Chief Operating Officer at CAMS. I retired in 2016, but I started planning for my retirement even from 2014. I wanted to be sufficiently physically and mentally active post-retirement, but I was not looking for a full-time job because I wanted to spend enough time with my family. I wanted time to read books, which I love. I wanted to also read Vedanta. So I was looking for a volunteering job, which is on a part-time basis. There are many not-for-profit organizations who are doing excellent service to the society. Today, they are well funded by corporates under the Corporate Social Responsibility Scheme. So they are not short of funds, but they badly need people to manage their projects. So I selected 2 such organizations in Chennai. They work in the area of educating poor children. I spend some time part-time basis, and that gives me immense satisfaction and keeps me physically and mentally active. Secondly, I and my wife study Sanskrit. Learning a new language at this age keeps my brain really active. And since I and my wife study the language together, I tend to spend more time with my wife in an activity which both of us like. Thirdly, study of Sanskrit also helps me to understand Hindu religious scriptures better, which I'm trying to learn from listening to speeches of acharyas and by reading books. Lastly, I have enough time to do physical activities, yoga, and also read books. So I find after retirement, I'm not in a vacuum. I'm sufficiently active, but more importantly, I'm engaged in activities which I love to do. Thank you. That's how I find my retirement life very, very enjoyable. Thanks, Mr. Balraman.
Thank you, Venkatraman. Now, therefore, you can see that you do not have to keep working all the time, immersing yourself in your current job, forgetting how your future is going to change. That's obviously not the right thing to do, because you do have to prepare to hand over your responsibilities to your successor. And speaking of which, I must tell you that I am very, very experienced in retirement. I have lots of experience in retirement. Is it possible? Is it an oxymoron? I mean, do you retire only once, or do you retire several times? I look back at my life. Why was I not shocked similarly, like Mr. Ramachandran? I was not shocked because I had been retiring for a number of years, long before I reached my age 60. I retired from the chairmanship of Footwear Design and Development Institute, Noida, which was a Government of India company. Then I retired from the International Board of Nokia. And I had retired from a number of such companies over time. I retired from Pons in a way. And then I joined Hindustan Lever. Then I retired from Hindustan Lever. And then I joined, I started a company called Adrenaline E-Systems. And I retired from there at the age of 60. And so I had retired from Mother Dairy. I had retired from Mahindra World City Developers. So you see, the group captain said that we will all introduce ourselves. Incidentally, the introduction he has given me is not totally true. Many of them are past engagements. They are not current engagements. I am currently engaged only with Delphi TVS and India Nippon Electricals Limited. May I apologize for this erroneous introduction put out by MMA, which I had not corrected. They are not wrong. I am wrong because I did not correct it. Now, having said all this, it's our intention, Nand Kishore's initiative, inspiration, YVL Pandit's guidance, we plan to ensure that people who retire with lots of expertise, lots of experience, lots of skills, but still with good health, with intention to contribute to society, to businesses at large. We want to facilitate this. We want to facilitate a site at MMA, and we will make sure that the skills are assembled and offered to people who can use these skills, either pro bono or for money. If there is money made, we would like to use it for some good cause. So we plan to do that. Both Pandit and Nandu have excellent thoughts to share. Venkatraman referred to keeping his mind active. I was reading somewhere that somebody asked a Japanese scientist who was aged 92, that how is he able to keep himself young? His answer was, if you keep learning something all the time, your mind is always young. And if your mind is young, your body is young. So there seems to be something there. And I now hand you over to Mr. Pandit.
Thank you, Mr. Balraman. First of all, I must thank MMA Group Captain Vijay Kumar and Mr. Balraman for giving me this opportunity to speak at the MMA event. I lived in Chennai for 14 years, and I've participated in many MMA activities. I've spoken at a few of them, and therefore it's good to be back at MMA events. A brief background about myself. I joined Pons in 1975 as a management trainee from IIMA campus, and I spent 18 years in Pons, held various sales, marketing, general management roles. And when I left Pons in 1993, I was heading the Pons Personal Products Business Unit, in those days called the Profit Center. Then I spent 10 years working overseas. I lived in Hong Kong, I lived in Jakarta. I was managing APAC markets and global markets. I came back to India at a time when it was telecom revolution, and I joined Tata Group, heading a couple of telecom circles and launching Tata Mobile Services. Then in 2005, I found my second love, if you can call it that. And I was the managing director India for SHL, which is a global leader in talent management solutions, which is helping people develop, helping organizations identify the right people, develop them, particularly into leadership positions. So that's something that resonated with me immensely. So I stayed on for till the time I retired. And very recently, I have set up my own consulting firm. And my purpose is to help leaders reach the pinnacle of their potential in their personal life as well as in their professional life. So that's my purpose. Let me briefly now use a PowerPoint presentation to share some of my thoughts and ideas. Can everybody see this clearly? Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Unlike Mr. Balraman, I haven't retired many times. I've retired only once. So I don't have great experience in sharing that. And retirement is highly individualistic. Each person has to find his or her own balance and how they're going to spend their post-work life or retired life. Having said that, I'd like to share a framework. And if that helps the individual think through their options, help them in their thinking process, that would be great. I would also like to share some personal examples and examples from a couple of people I know. So all of these, if they can stimulate some thinking from in those who are particularly in the age group of 50 to 60, I think this session would have achieved its objective. I retired in October 2018 from SHL when I reached 65. And my team had a send-off for me, a retirement party, so to say. And the theme of that retirement party was, can everybody see this slide?
Yes, sir.
Goodbye to the tie. And the reason was that I wore a tie every day to work. Even though we had a dress code which said dress for comfort for the last 5 years or so, I still wore a tie to work. And this was Bond's legacy. Having worn a tie at 40+ degrees in places like Guntur, Bhilwara, Junagadh, Trichy, I was not going to give up wearing a tie. So I wore my tie every day to work. And probably my people were calling me Mr. Tie secretly behind my back, but they brought it to the fore during my retirement part. So having retired, the next couple of days were really strange. When I wake up in the morning, my mind runs through what are the meetings for the day, which customer am I going to speak to or meet? Is there a travel later in the evening? So when I woke up after my retirement, next couple of days, it was completely a vacuum. It was nothing. Then I logged into my laptop. I still had my laptop for a month more. Checked my mail, just 4 mails. I used to get about 40, 50 emails every day. And there were only 4 emails. And I was through with it in a matter of minutes. So there was a complete vacuum for the first couple of days. And if I had not planned for my retirement subsequently, for the subsequent weeks, I would have been at a terrible loss or a terrible situation. I will share with you something I read around that time. A very interesting book called, I'm unable to see where I can click the next slide. Seems to have disappeared.
Just press enter on your computer.
Just
You'll
enter.
get to the next.
Enter. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I'll do now. I think that is missing. I read a very good book called Purposeful Retirement, How to Bring Happiness and Meaning to Your Retired Life. And I'll give you a couple of passages from that book. And I would urge everyone to read that book if possible. My value as a human being is independent of my job. I think every one of us has to realize this. If I base my value on my job and my job goes away, my value as a human being goes away with it. This leads to big trouble. This leads to unhappiness, isolation, depression, and even eventually death. He gives an example of a military battalion commander, a full colonel, who was asked to retire after 38 years of service. And this person did not want to go because the military was his life. He felt as though he had been cut off from life, and he died within 6 months. This was a real life example he quotes. Another example he gives is that there was a very senior executive who retired, and they organized a big celebration send-off party for him on a Friday. But the man turned up at work on Monday morning because he had nothing to do. Luckily for me, I didn't turn up at work the next day after my retirement party. There was another interesting quote. The danger comes when we allow ourselves to be defined by our job, our title, and our paycheck. Most of us go around, most of our lives, introducing ourselves as I'm so-and-so at this company. I'm vice president, so-and-so. I'm managing director or CEO, so-and-so. When that's gone, what is left? Actually, what is left is you. You are left. You with your skills, talents, and abilities to make a difference in the world. You. My thoughts on how you can make a difference in the post-retired life, post-work life, with your skills, talents, and abilities. I think, in my view, there are 4 pillars for a successful post-work life or a retired life. Purpose, financial stability, physical fitness, and mental health. I'm not going to be spending much time on financial stability or physical fitness. I'm going to be spending a little more time on purpose and mental health. And we saw a lot of this from example that from what Mr. Venkatraman spoke about. Let me start with purpose. I think we need to plan, have a vision of ourselves over the post-retirement years, if not for the entire duration of the post-retirement, at least for the next couple of years post-retirement. Broad goals or activities that we would like to pursue post-retirement, an activity in an area that's of deep interest to us, an area that we are passionate about, maybe related or unrelated to what we are doing, and ideally serving the community. And I want to come back and talk about this bit later on in my talk. It could be charity work, or it could be work for monetary benefit. And as we heard Mr. Venkatraman, he has chosen charity work, which is immensely beneficial to the society. And very importantly, we need to leverage the networks we have built over the years, or it should help us build networks that can support us during our retirement life. Let me share with you two personal examples. Tale of two brothers-in-law. One brother-in-law is my wife's brother. The other is my sister's husband. One person was a doctor who branched into hospital management, and he was the chief medical officer in a couple of hospitals in the Middle East. Post-retirement, he came back to Bangalore. Couldn't find anything that interested him. He had a deep interest in photography. He was pursuing it as a hobby. And he invested in a high-end photography equipment. He attended a couple of photography courses. He was very interested in wildlife, so he traveled around the national parks in the country, took superb photographs which have been published in some leading publications. Then he also traveled to Serengeti and Kruger Park and made close friends with some of the guides over there, with the result that now they take him to parts of the park which are not allowed. So he started organizing tours for close friends and relatives and others from Bangalore to these national parks. It gives him a bit of money, but most importantly, it satisfies his urge to be with nature and photography. My other brother-in-law held a senior position in IT and systems in a bank, and post-retirement, he has led a totally sedentary life. And all that he's done is social networks, Facebooks, dining and entertaining himself, with the result that last month, he had a severe heart attack in the middle of COVID crisis. Very lucky, he got medical attention and he survived, he's recovering. So these are two extreme examples, but I hope they convey the message that post-retirement, we need to keep ourselves occupied physically and mentally. Now let me move to the second pillar, which is financial stability. And I'm not going to spend much time on this because we had an excellent presentation by Mr. N.K. Prasad a couple of weeks back. And this is important for us to be able to pursue the retirement. And the planning for your retirement, the financial planning for your retirement has to start very early, maybe in your 40s. And you need to work backwards, which is what is the kind of post-retired lifestyle that we need to have? And therefore, what are the kind of savings and investments we need to have during our working life? Take into account the various factors which I have listed, major expenses, capital expenses, provide for contingency expenses, etc. So once we have adequate financial stability, we are in a position to pursue areas of interest post our work life. So I won't spend more time on this. Let me move to the third aspect, which is the physical fitness aspect. Physical fitness, I think me, Raman and Nandu, we are all passionate about. I'm sure many of you on this call are passionate about, and we can take a full 1 hour or more talking about these aspects. So let me quickly run through this. Exercise, diet, sleep are critical. And between your 40s, mid 40s, if not earlier, you need to start paying attention to each of these. And definitely as you reach 55, mid 50s and closer to your, if 60 is your retirement, closer to that. Exercise, you need to be looking at cardiovascular fitness, muscular strength, and joint flexibility. Choose any kind of exercise, whether it is yoga, tai chi, running, gym, whatever exercise suits you. That's something that you need to engage regularly in. There are dozens of diets available, the keto diet, Atkins diet, Mediterranean diet, on to any of these. But for a long-term steady diet, a balanced diet consisting of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats is the best that can work. These days, sleep is getting a lot of attention. And in fact, let me take a minute on that. I would urge you to read a book or listen to Matthew Walker, who's got a sleep center in the US. He's done a lot of research in sleep. Personally, I think his views are a bit extreme and prescriptive, more suited for the American audience, but there are relevant lessons for us. Sleep is critical for improving our learning abilities. So for your children and grandchildren, please make sure that they get adequate sleep, even during exam time. Sleep is essential for cardiovascular health, for your immune system, and a variety of other, for cognitive abilities. So pay attention to it. And most importantly, have an annual medical checkup. And that should be even before you start on any of these activities. A regular annual medical checkup will be extremely beneficial. I like this quote from Robert Waldinger, and I'll talk about him a bit later. He says, take care of your body as though you were going to need it for 100 years, because you might actually need it. So let me move to the final part, and I've already taken about 17 odd minutes, and I want to make sure I end in about 20, 22 minutes. Mental health, again, is a key to happiness and productive retirement. And learning new skills, and we heard this from Mr. Venkatraman, is absolutely something which will keep your mental health at in a very good condition. Learning new hobbies is very, very important. Again, stimulates your neurons, neural circuits, and there is something called neuroplasticity, which gets stimulated by both learning new skills and pursuing new hobbies. And there are a variety of exercises for mental health, mindfulness, and yoga. These are absolutely fantastic exercises for mental health. And I want to spend a minute or two on these last two aspects, which is about having close relationships and connection with the larger community. I want to take you through very briefly one of the longest study on happiness. And this was started in 1938 by Harvard University, and it's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It's one of the longest studies, and it's still running. This studied the lives of over 700 men, over 75 years now, nearly more than 80 years. And every 2 years, a lot of data on their health, both physical health, mental health, their relationships was studied. And some of the major findings were shared in a TED Talk, What Makes a Good Life, by Robert Waldinger in the November 2015 TED Talk. I was planning to show that. Unfortunately, I believe I'm not allowed to share a TED Talk on this platform. So I'll give you key highlights from that. The most important lesson from that study of 75 odd years was that good relationships keep us happier and healthier. Social connections are really important, and loneliness kills. People who are more socially connected to family, to friends, and to community are happier, physically healthier, and live longer. It's not just the number of friends you have, but it is the quality of the close relationships that matter. And good relationships just don't protect our bodies, but they also protect our brains. So it's very important for both physical and mental health. And the study also threw out that those people who are most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80. So for those of us, or those of you who are in 50s and nearing 60s, this is a very critical lesson. There have been some criticisms of this. People say that this is only the American population, white American population. Is this relevant for us? I haven't come across another longitudinal study like this, and therefore the findings of this are relevant and they resonate. I personally think they're very important. I also want to give very quickly 3 key findings from lessons from positive psychology. Positive psychology says that there are 3 types of lives one can lead. The pleasant life, where you pursue all the good things in life, entertaining yourself, having a good time. Second is engaged life, where you pursue or engage in activities where you use your talents and abilities for your own satisfaction. And the third is purposeful life, engage in activities where you use your talents for a larger purpose of the community. None of this is watertight compartments. You can have a purposeful life, a combination of engaged life, but this is where you spend a major portion of your time. And the studies show that life satisfaction measures the highest where people spend more of their time, or most of the time, engaged in a purposeful life. When I joined Bonds in 1975, the average lifespan in India was 51 years. In 2019, the average lifespan was 70 years. Many of us, God willing, will live well into our 80s. And therefore, when you are 50 or even earlier, we need to start thinking about how we can make that span of life we have, God-given span of life, how can we make it purposeful and productive? Thank you.
Thank you, Pandit.
I overshot by about 3 minutes.
No problem. I will invite Nandu to fill in now. There is one other aspect that we should look at, which is also freedom from stress. You talked about meditation, yoga, listening to music. We will talk about all this. Okay.
Thank you.
Nandu?
Oh, yeah.
Unmute yourself, Nandu.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect, sir. Thank you.
Wonderful. So thank you, Mr. Balram. Thank you, Mr. Pandit. Thank you, Group Captain. Thank you, everybody. In a sense, you've said everything I wanted to say. So I guess my job is a little easier, just adding a few nuances here and there. So to very quickly reintroduce myself, I am, like everybody, a graduate of Ponds. And for about 38 years, I've been working in private sector, CEO, global positions and stuff like that. So I've been Darth Vader. And after retirement, I'm now trying to reposition myself as Yoda. So move to the good side of the force. So that's my career in a nutshell. So what I'll do is I'll share with you a few thoughts and stories and insights. And I'll use some slides to share. And I'll talk for about 20 minutes. And then we'll open up for a discussion. So let me start by sharing my screen and starting the broadcast of my screen. We should be able to see my screen now. Group Captain, can you see my screen?
Perfect. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, wonderful. So 3 things I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to talk to you about my experiences in Japan, because for a period of time, for about 5 years, I was the CEO for Nestle for Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. So I used to visit Japan very often. And I'll talk about the shape of careers and jobs in the near future and why what we are talking about is actually very relevant to people in their 40s and 50s. And finally, I'll talk some of the stuff that Mr. Pandit spoke about, but maybe with a twist. Talk about identity, purpose, and values. So 3 things. Let me start with my Japan story. So I used to visit Japan very often. Japan has about a quarter of the population who are above 65 years of age. And the most common disease that they all die from, so they all suffer from, is called sarcopenia. So basically what happens is they retire, the retirement age is 60. And after they retire, the average life expectancy for men is 81 years of age. For women, it's 88. Now, there is a gender difference for life expectancy in every society in the world. Japan seems to be a little more extreme. And one of the diseases, and Japan is a male-dominated society, a lot of the working age population is male. And when they are working, they're working from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night. After they work, they go have karaoke with the boys and basically go home to sleep for 4 or 5 hours and then stumble back into work and drink lots of coffee, which is good for Nescafe and the Nestle business. So one of the biggest diseases these people have, particularly the males, is called sarcopenia. Now, sarcopenia is like osteoporosis, osteopenia. Osteopenia is for the bones, sarcopenia is for the muscles. So the muscles wither away, they waste away, and they die. So people started to ask the question, why? Why do they get sarcopenia? And turns out most of them are malnourished. Then they started to ask, well, why are they malnourished? Do they not have enough money to eat? Turns out they're all actually financially okay. They can afford food, but they just don't eat. So why don't they eat? And apparently a lot of this has to do with a few underlying causes. One is loneliness. Second is a lack of self-worth. Or who am I? If I am no longer Mr. So-and-so in Toyota Motor Company, who am I? So these start to create problems. If these people are so invested into their work that they define themselves and their identity by who they are at work. So handing over the business card is a very formal ritual that's very Japanese. The amount you bow, all your relationships are circumscribed by hierarchy. And when they retire and go home, so the wives have a life without them. The wives say, darling, here's the rice in the rice cooker. I'm going off to the pachinko parlor or to meet my girlfriends or whatever. So the guy gets on the computer for an hour, he does something, and then he doesn't know what to do. So he literally doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to make friends, because that's one ability that men particularly have lost in the course of a 35 to 40-year working life, where all your social interactions are circumscribed by a certain formality and ritual. So yeah, I go to the supermarket. Suppose I go up and say hello to that guy. If he snubs me, I don't know what his level is. I don't know how much I should bow to him. So it creates an enormous amount of stress on them, and they just stop eating. Interestingly, a lot of migrant workers who've gone back to UP and Bihar, one of the most common complaints we hear from them is they have stopped eating. They say khane ka dil nahi karta, because they suddenly have lost a sense of self-worth. Who am I? Even being amongst family. Very interesting stuff. So going back to screen share and sharing some. So what kind of solutions could we eventually come with over here? So I talked about the careers, identity, and social connects. And the solutions we came up eventually, what we found was it makes a big difference just getting them to own a pet. So I recall visiting a Japanese couple. The man was 78 years old. They were living in a very affluent neighborhood in Tokyo, really plush apartment in a expensive neighborhood. The apartment size was 80 square meters. In Tokyo, that's a big deal. That means you're really rich. So the man met us and we had a 1 hour long interview with him, just sitting and chatting through an interpreter. He met us, he opened the door himself, and he was holding a little dog like that in his and throughout the 1 hour interview, he kept looking at the dog and he kept doing this. That poor dog didn't bark once, didn't touch the floor once, but somehow he felt a sense of reassurance and social connect with the dog. And eventually, taking dogs to dog get-togethers allows these people an avenue to start rebuilding a social life around their dogs. So it's a very interesting evolution because the shape of Japan is the most advanced aging society in the world. Things that happen in Japan, those trends will hit all our societies. China today has 300 million people above the age of 60. India is far behind that, but we are rapidly moving towards an aging society. It's happening all over the world as birth rates decline and life expectancy increases slowly. So that's the first concept. Just wanted to share with you some insights from my visits in Japan and the learnings that come from there. Second, I'm going to talk to you about careers and jobs in the near future. So the future of careers and jobs. Now we see already some mirror of Japan happening more and more, even in urban India, but all over the world, with spouses who give up their formal careers. This could be female, mostly it is, but increasingly it is also male. So when they give up their careers, what's the sense of self-worth? What's the sense of identity? And this can play a lot of havoc with your psychology and your sense of self-worth, your health, physical and mental. So this is an issue. But increasingly what we see happening is jobs and careers are getting circumscribed by technological disruption. So a lot of jobs that can be automated are being automated, not only in factories with robots, but even white collar jobs are being automated and replaced, initially by BPOs, but eventually by software programs and bots. Half the legal jobs in the US have already disappeared. It's called the process of discovery, paralegals work, because that's increasingly done by software these days. Earlier, it was done by humans searching. So as jobs and careers disappear, what are the jobs of tomorrow? And are we prepared with our skills and mindset? So the jobs of the future are what humans cannot do. Or, sorry, I beg your pardon. Let me rephrase that. The jobs of the future are what computers cannot do, or what humans, together with computers, can do better than computers can do alone. So, of course, this is creation of new technology and science, but it's also new jobs not yet created. And it's a lot of soft, and we see this happening under our noses. The fastest growing industry in India is the sports industry. There's IPL, Indian Premier League, Indian Football League, Indian Kabaddi League, Indian Hockey League, Indian Badminton League, Indian I don't know what league. But all sports have a lot of money. Entertainment is huge, whether it's Netflix, whether it's news as entertainment and listening to Arnab Goswami demanding the nation wants to know, politics, religion, all these are huge growth areas of the future. The point is a lot of jobs of today are going to disappear. And if jobs of today disappear, more and more, and we see this happening in the IT sector today already, we see this happening in a lot of banking sectors. People in their 40s with young families are getting redundated or getting laid off. And this plays havoc with their life in a way that those of us who are 60 and above, cannot begin to imagine. Now, how do they cope with this? And what skills do these jobs of the future require? Because as Peter Drucker said shortly before he died, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, but to act with yesterday's logic. So how should we prepare? The most important skill that we need in our 30s, in our 40s, in our 50s is learning agility, the ability to go out and learn new skills. Very important. How to start being creative and move away from this very rigid culture that we have been exposed to. How to start working well in teams and getting away from this individualistic education culture that we have shaped in India. How to start to develop and build emotional intelligence so you can actually work with teams. And most importantly, how do you build and protect your integrity, character, and values? Because in a new reality where you are a personal brand, this is one thing that you cannot compromise on, which can make or destroy your personal brand. So moving from there to identity, purpose, and values, which is a nice segue into this third section. Clayton Christensen, at Harvard Business School, to his graduating class, he basically asks three questions. He says, how can I be sure that I'll be happy in my life and career? How can my relationships be an enduring source of happiness? And Mr. Pandit talked about that. And third question, he says, how can I be sure I will stay out of jail? And this is no accident. I mean, Jeff Skillings from Enron was a Harvard graduate. So something like between 2 and 5% of graduates from top business schools actually end up committing crimes. How does that happen? How do they lose the moral compass? At what stage do they lose it? And it can happen at any stage, but normally it happens when you're at the top or when you have just stepped off the top and into a second innings. That's when people make errors in judgment. Those are the kind of things we're going to talk about now. So he gives lots of tips, and I've taken his tips and built on them with some of my tips. I won't talk about all of these. There are 7 tips. You can read them later. I'll just talk about 3. Numbers 1, 6, and numbers 1, 5, and 6. Sorry. So number 1, I'm going to talk about defining your identity and purpose. Mr. Pandit talked about it briefly. I'll come back to that. Second, I'm going to talk about the importance of humility, particularly in the context of building learning agility, because we all like to learn from bosses, seniors, and in an education system from people who know more than us. The challenge is having the humility, because once you reach a position of power where there's nobody else who knows more than you, where you're the senior most, you still have the humility to learn from people junior to you, to learn from people who do not know more than you in your core competence, but may know something else in their core competence. And lastly, and the point number 6, what's the yardstick by which you measure your life? These are the 3 things I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. So first, and Mr. Pandit stressed this, and it's so important, particularly coming from the Japanese example. It's true for all of us. It's a very deep insight. Also, Mr. Balram spoke about this right in the beginning. It's important for all of us to realize you are not your title. You are not your position. You're not Mr. CEO. You're not Mr. Vice President. All of these belong to somebody else before you and will belong to somebody else after you. So the day you step out of that formal role, people will talk to you differently. They'll look at you differently. And this is a huge mental adjustment you should be prepared for even before the redundancy happens or the retirement happens, because it will happen. That's the only thing we know for sure. It will happen. Second, therefore, what is your self-identity? If you're not Mr. Vice President, if you're only somebody who wears the cloak of Mr. Vice President and holds that as a custodianship for a period of time, who are you? Yeah, what's your personal brand? What is it built around? And define what are the integrity, boundaries, and values that you will not compromise. What is the underlying character? Have you built a network of people, diverse network of people? What's your track record? How well are you able to communicate with people, empathize with them, and build relationships with them? All of these are very important. What is your ikigai? Very important. And I'll take a few minutes to define the Japanese concept of ikigai by using a whiteboard. And basically what they say is, the simplest way, even before we get to ikigai, pick something that you're really very good, number 1 in the world at doing. Pick something that you really love to do. Pick something that gives you money. And the intersection of those is what you should do. Now, we can complicate this by actually moving into making this more complicated. What are you number 1 in the world at doing? What is it that you really like and enjoy doing? What is it that you earn money for? And what is it that the world needs? And the intersection set of all of these, that is the Japanese concept of ikigai, right? So the earlier screen this is the concept I use for most people starting off in their work lives to figure out a sweet spot, because unless you're really good at something, somebody else will sooner or later come and eat your lunch. If you don't enjoy what you do, sooner or later you'll have a heart attack. And if you don't earn some money for what you do, sooner or later, you'll die of hunger. So try and find this sweet spot in there. And as we move into the 40s and 50s, I add this dimension, what is good for the world, and try and find one that ticks all four of these boxes. And that's the Japanese concept of ikigai. So allow me to go back and share my screen and a couple more slides and some more concepts to talk about, building on this concept of ikigai. How do you find this? Start as early as you can. Now, on defining your purpose, you go and Google this, you go to YouTube, and you will find a lot of very wise people telling you about this. I like Victor Stretcher's definition of applying your best self to what or who matters most in your life. But what's important also is how do you define your values as distinct from your company values? As long as you were Mr. CEO or Mr. Vice President, your values, you could adopt the company values and align with them and say, these are my values. The day you step out of that cocoon, what are your values? How do you monitor this? How do you stay true to this? And here's where what is very important is, can you create a support or reference group of peers who will help you stay true to your values? You know what they say, that you're the average of your 7 closest friends. So very important to start to give some thought to what a principle or a value is not a principle unless you're willing to pay a price for it and sacrifice to keep that principle. So build a support network that allows you to actually define that and know what your values are as distinct from your corporate values. Now, happiness. There's a lot of study on this. I'm just going to share with you 2 concepts. One is by Professor Robert Quinn. And this builds on everything that Mr. Pandit said earlier. What he says is, happy people tend to have a life driven by a mission. Now, what is a mission? And he says a mission apparently has 4 elements to it. First is a sense of belonging. Do you belong to a social network or a purpose-built network that's bigger than you yourself? Second, do you have a sense of purpose? We talked about that in the last slide. Third, which is very rare, a moment of transcendence. It can happen during meditation, during dance, but probably is very, very rare in most cases. But most important is the story you tell yourself about yourself in your most private moments. Do you say, listen, shit happened. Oh my God, the world is against me. I'm screwed. Or do you say, listen, shit happened. Things happen like that. How am I going to respond to it and make that the best thing that happened to me? How am I going to move beyond that? So all 4 things are very important to living a life driven by a mission, which in turn is what leads to happiness. One more concept, then I open up for questions and answers. And this is a concept from Professor Raj Raghunathan, who teaches at ISB. And he is one of the biggest coaches on happiness coming from the professional business related context. And he says it basically depends on 2 things, goals and the way you approach the goals. The goals, first you have the hygiene level goals, food, shelter, safety, the basic. I mean, you need a certain amount of basic hygiene factors, food on the table, etc., to have some comfort levels to be happy, some spending money, etc. And then he says, beyond that, what you need are 3 things: mastery, belongingness, and autonomy. So 3 things, MBA is the acronym. Mastery, is there something that you're really, really good at? Something that you feel that you are really good at doing? Belongingness, do you have that social connect? It's not the number of people, it's the quality of the connect. If it's even one person that you feel really close with and can empathize, that gives you a sense of belongingness. And third, autonomy. Do you believe you have a sense of autonomy in your life? And the approach to each of these 3, MBA, you can approach them from an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset. And that's what drives the happiness. For example, mastery if you approach it from a scarcity-driven mindset, you will always compare yourself to other. Oh, that other guy is Mr. CEO. I am Mr. CEO -1. The other guy has a Mercedes. I have a Volvo. So how do I get that? And that always creates an external benchmark for happiness, which you will never reach. The internal driven approach to mastery says, I do this because I really enjoy what I'm doing. And I am the best because I'm the best I can be, not the best in the world, the best I can be at doing what I'm doing. That's the internally driven approach to mastery, which leads to happiness. The same thing coming to belongingness. You can approach it from a scarcity-minded approach, which says, I should be more loved. How can I get people to love me? Or the abundance-minded approach, which says, other people have the same need for belongingness that I have. How can I, instead of worrying about how much I'm getting, how can I go out and give? So others feel the sense of belongingness. And the third thing, autonomy. How much control do you have? It's a little bit like the story you tell yourself about yourself. When you talk about autonomy, do you see yourself as a victim of external circumstances? Or do you see yourself as a master of your internal reaction and therefore feel the autonomy within you? So very powerful concepts to working on this concept of happiness. And this goes way beyond just retirement. It starts much before retirement, starts already in your 40s and 50s, and builds up as you go through life. So with those provocations, let me stop here and open up for questions to the entire panel. Group captain.
Mr. Balraman would like to take on, because a couple of them from the people who have joined us on Zoom would like to ask the questions. Mr. Balraman would like to call on them to ask the questions. Mr. Balraman, you said Mr. Anu was a couple of people who have joined us this evening will be asking the questions.
Yeah, there are a number of questions that have come up, which I see on the screen.
Yes.
You see, this is a very large topic that we have taken. Okay. We have covered lots of things, but if you take even the concept of self-worth, that will take 3-4 sessions to explain to you. And then this abundance mindset and scarcity mindset are extremely important. The physical fitness that Pandit talked about, how to prepare for retirement financially. I mean, everything will require several sessions. So today we will open it out, and then we will decide where we need to elaborate, where we need to focus over time. So let me begin with this disclaimer that we are just beginning. Okay. We may be overrun with a number of questions. Are there questions for, there are a number of questions I see. Anu, do you have a comment on this? SRV, are you there?
I think they need help unmuting.
Yeah.
Or they can ask the question via chat.
May I know the name, sir?
Anuradha Oza is one.
Yes.
SR application is another.
You can see that A, no?
A Chandramouli is a third.
I give permission, Anu ma'am, and
yes, Anu has now opened up. Yes, good evening, Anu. And who else? Venkatraman.
Venkatraman.
SR Venkateshwaran.
Sir Venkateshwaran.
Venkateshwaran, okay.
Can you say hi, sir? Sir Venkateshwaran.
And Venkateshwaran sir also done. And another one, sir, your Mauli something.
Chandramouli.
Chandramouli, sir, is, I think, not here.
We spoke earlier. In our,
you can see the group captain. You can.
Yeah, Mauli
Yeah.
sir, you can understand.
Then he'll come back again. I think he sent a couple of
Another
questions. Yeah. But these are two.
Any other? Balram sir, any other person I need to give permission?
Anand Kripalu has also joined us. If he's want to ask questions.
Anand has a question. Yes.
Anand Kripalu, you are in. Please come on, sir. Anand Kripal, you can
Yeah, I
unmute.
give permission, sir. Anand
Great.
Kripal is also okay.
I'm in, but I don't have a question right now. Let me just
Thank you.
think
Thank
about
you, sir.
it and get back.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you, Mr.
I
Anand.
have two questions to ask when you permit me.
Yes, Mr. Venkatesh, please go ahead, sir.
We wanted to
Two
start
questions.
with, okay, go ahead.
The first question is, as you lead into your retirement, and we all know we are supposed to let go, but I presume each of us are passionate in our own way. How does one strike a balance of delivering on the job, but still getting into retirement mode and letting go? That's one question. The other I had is more about how do we join forums, which is something maybe I can take later. I'll stop with this one question for the present.
Yeah, who would like to take it up?
Mr. Balram, I think you're the best position for that.
Okay. See, letting go is, dependent on your developing a huge attachment to what is coming after retirement. So you need to start thinking about that. And as you keep starting thinking about that and trying out a few things, you will find some interest, something that grabs you. This letting go is really, really difficult, but that is something that you will have to learn. I mean, if you're a diabetic, you have to let go of sugar, and all of us will have to leave this life at some point of time. So you have to let go. So letting go is something it will come if you develop an attachment to what is coming after retirement. If you start looking at what you want to do, Pandit, yeah.
Sorry, only if you have finished.
No, go ahead, Pandit. You had something.
See, let me share my example. I was very interested in people development. That's why I joined SHL and developing young talent, developing leaders. And I realized somewhere down the line that coaching is a very powerful approach for developing people, developing leaders. So somewhere around when I was about 55, 56, around that age group, I started training myself, went to classes, took courses, studied that in parallel with what I was doing. So it was in a way connected with what I was doing, but not exactly what I was doing in my work. There are a lot of parallel similarities. So I trained myself for about 10 years now. I'm pursuing that. It is helping me a great deal post-retirement. So if you can find that kind of a balance, it will be great.
Yeah, the challenge is on the current jobs, each of us have a certain passion displayed and you're respected for that. For getting into a mindset of saying that, okay, we will dilute the passion, maybe if it is required to let go, that's the challenge. I hear what you say, but yeah.
No, you can be passionate about two things.
You can be passionate about both. In fact, this is a mindset we have, it's developed, I think, personally, I'm talking about myself, from our childhood, where we pursued at least I was not a multi-dimensional person. If I could pursue one thing, max, I could do a little bit of sport, but studies occupied all my life. But when I look at many of the others, particularly in the Western world, they pursue many things parallelly. And I'm sure there are many, many examples in our own country. They're passionate about many things, passionate about music, passionate about maybe painting in parallel with your work life.
Yeah. As the group captain, you were
shall we go ahead to the question, sir? Yes.
You were a pilot. But you left Air Force and you started a Madras Management Association.
Yes, many things what you said actually it come in my life because you all planned for retirement. I was at the age of 52. All of a sudden I called, no, I'm going to quit. I could have continued the Air Force till about 58. I quit at the age of 52, 31st of March 2007. But what happened immediately, the next 1 week I joined MMA because it's all Providence. I met somebody in the golf course. None of you mentioned about golf. Golf is another one which keep you going when you're old, but it is a personal thing. But I can assure you, golf is very good. And I was an air show specialist and did a couple of things which has got no relevance to management. But I love people. I like interacting. I keep wanted to learn. And when I joined from Air Force to MMA, it became a smooth turn. And one thing I also learned that what Mr. Nandu said, humility. very, very important. What Christian said is marginal costing error, which I did because I was in a very sensitive job in the Air Force. That marginal costing error, the temptation which really takes you, and one error and you go to jail. And I've seen, and that's the reason I know that's very, very important lesson. And what made me think is humility, which comes, I learned from the same lesson, is you should have a high self-esteem. High self-esteem comes when you keep learning something in your life all the time, which each one of you mentioned. That's why the membership to organize like MMA makes you learn every day. Every time you listen something, you learn something. I keep listening to so many people in the last 13 years. I think so many things I learned in my life. I think I'm blessed than any one of you to keep learning every day, listening to so many outstanding leaders in my life. So I think changing over, otherwise many armed forces people finding it very difficult. I find it very difficult coming out of the uniform all the time. I have so much power, authority, traveling around the world, traveling around the Air Force. But coming and small little organization, as Mr. Pandit said, NGO, people think working in NGO is not a very high profile job. But I can assure you, sir, working in NGO gives you significant of satisfaction. Today, the NGO is also very high profile, funded by corporate, what Mr. Pandit said. So I urge upon people to keep listening to the great knowledge which is getting shared at many platforms. I'm not telling MMA, any platform. And you should have adaptability to the what you're going to be there, and working with NGO really gives you a lot of learning in that actually. Just Mr. Balram.
MB Sibbaya at a public speaking event some 2 years ago said this. He said that it is said in Hindu scriptures, when a Pushanikai comes out of a creeper, when it is green, its attachment to the creeper is very, very strong. To detach it, you have to really, really use a heavy knife and cut it. But when it ripens, the attachment slowly, the attachment also withers. It falls off on its own accord. So you must think of the fact that you are not the job, you are not the designation, as Nandu kept on saying. You are just your own individual. You should understand. Like Pandit said, you stop wearing the tie. You need to understand that. We all cheat ourselves saying, retirement is another 5 years away. That is the problem.
Thank you. So, a number of questions have come in our from the viewers as well as from YouTube. So we can mix and match. So we got another 20-25 minutes easily, so we can accommodate as many questions as possible. Yes, Satyanarayana has asked, several successful executives find it hard to let go because of their organization demand lot from them until the last day. This does not continue to feed the ego. What specific mental aspects you have to work out to come out of this and address these aspects?
Can I take that?
Yes, Mr. Nandakrishnan.
There are two parts to this answer. The first part is what Mr. Pandit referred to, and what Anand Kripalu has also commented in the chat, which is start really, don't become unidimensional. Start to have a multifaceted personality where you define your individual self not as identical to your work, but you define it broader than just work. That's important. The second very important part of this is before you start any role, before you start the role, be aware before you start the role that you are only playing a role for a period of time. You're not becoming a new person. You have to assume the role, you have to do what the role requires. So the attitude with which you enter the role makes a difference in how well you leave the role. Because if you enter the role with a lot of arrogance, the arrogance and the belief, and especially if you are successful, it leads to hubris, and you believe you're infallible. And that's the moment when you set yourself up for either failure on the job or failure the moment you step out and you suddenly find you're no longer all powerful. And that's when you have this temptation to listen. If people ask you to work till the last day, it is okay to work till the last day, till the last moment, not because you're Mr. CEO, but because you're a professional, you have a sense of self-worth to do what you're doing. If that's the reason you're doing, great. If the reason you're doing it is because I'm Mr. CEO, then you're setting yourself up for a big fall.
Pandit, would you like to add on to this?
I'd like to add, except that it may not be politically correct. My politically incorrect answer is that people don't want to let go. I have seen many senior leaders, CEOs, and particularly those coming from businesses where they don't have a good succession plan, a good process which has been institutionalized of leadership succession. They try to cling on. It's a bit of ego, a lot of other benefits one gets as being a CEO. That's what holds back people from leaving that position and moving on. Incorrect politically, maybe, but that's the truth.
Mr. Balraman, would you like to add on to this? Because you have been board several very high-profile assignments you have been holding. Would you like to add on to this, sir?
Hello?
Mr. Balraman, you have been also holding very high-profile, continuously been in the boards all through. There's another question which has come in relation to this itself. Now, being in high-profile board all through in your career, does it also add to this issues?
It doesn't add to issues. Actually, wherever I go, I try to do the good for the company. You see, being a South Indian, I go by the rule of law, letter of law. I mean, if it says that you have to contribute to that board, contribute to that company, I very sincerely do that. And they accept it. I mean, sometimes it's difficult. Okay. The establishing ethics in a company is something you have to fight for. I mean, you have to stand up for what you believe is right. And you have to motivate the company to do well. I mean, you have to challenge the company's performance. And I have continuously done it. And I have often said, I will step down if what I'm saying is difficult for you. And they have said, no, they have actually extended my tenure. They said, look, we are used appointing our own retired executives who are yes men. You know, for the first time, we have somebody who challenges what we're saying. So, I mean, coming from Unilever, you tend to challenge. You know, you tend to say, how is this performance adequate? I mean, how is this goal adequate? You know, why are you not the best in your field? Why can't you do that? And I also had to stand up for ethics and corporate governance, and I had insisted. I write a letter saying I don't agree with this. This doesn't go with company law, and I do not agree with it.
So, very true, sir. Very super, sir. Very true. In fact, from the armed forces perspective, I work with very senior leaders. The armed forces gives tremendous perks and privileges when you are the highest appointment, head of the country's armed forces or regions. But I've seen very difficult for them the day retires because the power. And I find more than the individuals who lead, the family find it so difficult because they're used to so much of thing. So that's why the preparation, as we all mentioned, is very important to meet the life. The next question which has come, Mr. Kannan Gopalakrishnan, sir. Along with discussion on retirement, maybe it's worth considering the multiple careers. If the current generation is likely to live for 100 years and jobs are getting scarce and fleeting, is it a time to think of 3 to 4 different jobs, careers, which lead to need of for ability to learn, move across the fields of and being able to do different things over a long span? I think from my side, I've seen only 2 jobs, Air Force and MMA. But I think to give you a continuity, I now like Mr. Nandakishore to please add on.
Yeah, but this is exactly what I was talking about. Exactly, because when the average life of a Fortune 500 company is 15 years, then it's the careers like mine where you work 30, 40 years in one company belongs to my generation. In the current generation, you will going to have multiple jobs. Not only multiple jobs, you'll have multiple careers. Multiple careers, why? Because the nature of jobs will change. Now, it's very important to understand one thing. I don't like the idea of talking of retirement. Let's stop talking of retirement. You know why? Who invented retirement was the Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. And he invented the concept of retirement, and he set the retirement age at 58. Why? Because life expectancy was 58 in Prussia. So you work till the day you were 58, 58th birthday, everybody, you have a big birthday party, everybody says, happy birthday, Herr so-and-so, they click their heels and they bow and they sing. and then you have a drink, then you go home and you die. Now, today, we are still retiring the same way, but we refuse to die. So historically, the human condition was people worked till they were able or till they died. That's the historical human condition. So the concept of why is that? As Mr. Pandit mentioned, and Mr. Balram mentioned, our sense of self-worth, our sense of happiness, our sense of health is all intricately linked to this sense of purpose, the sense of mission, the sense of self-worth. So therefore, prepare for a life where you're employed till the last day, where you're active till the last day. And that will require you to have many careers. Sometimes the careers will be simultaneous. You'll have a career as a father and as a manager and as a volunteer. Later on, you will have a career as a grandfather and as a professor and as something else. But there'll be multiple careers, and you have to learn new skills each time you change careers. This is the nature of the new reality. And that's why it's important to prepare our people for this multiple career, no retirement life before they graduate.
Nandu, I think it is time for us to talk about purpose and why you are born and the concept of ikigai. You see, if you really look at it, in our generation, we all wanted a job to feed ourselves and feed our families. Okay, as Nandu rightly pointed out, those days have changed. Economies have improved. You can even be an artist and earn enough money. You can be a dancer or a singer and earn enough money. In our times, unless you are an engineer and MBA, you do not learn enough money, right? Let's understand why we did engineering, unlike Pandit, and why we did MBA. We did all that to get a job. But today, you have the freedom to be exactly what you are. Why are you born? I mean, if you really look at that, why is Jesudas a great singer? My wife says I have a great voice, but I can't sing because my neural network is very bad. It doesn't understand music. I have a manager at home who cannot understand mathematics nor English. But when it comes to singing, he's amazing. I mean, I'm really surprised that brain can be tuned to singing, but not to logic, not to numbers. I mean, you see, I have seen my niece, who was by birth a natural dancer. Okay. You see, I believe that when we are born here, this is something that Nandu referred to. Okay. He put 4 circles and found the common thing. You are born with a very specific skill set, with the idea you will do that. That is your cosmic role, is what I believe. We all have a role in the cosmos. We always refer to ourselves as South Indian, Brahmin, non-Brahmin, manager, Kannadiga. We are all that. We are Indian, we are Asian, we are Earthies, but we are also a cosmic human being. In the cosmos, we have a role. We very, very clearly have a role. There is a purpose for us. And how, I was talking to Nandu about somebody is taking to it like duck takes to water. Why does a duck take to water? Why? Yeah, duck is born to take to water, right? And, there are land animals, there are water animals, right? Now, each is equipped very differently, right? So I am suggesting, similar to Ikigai, that we have a role to play in this cosmos. We are equipped to play that role. Or you follow Nandu's Ikigai example, which is fantastic, and try and identify that, play that role. You will get enormous satisfaction. You will be enormous success, because if you are born to sing, you will sing very well. When Jesudas is singing, is he working or is he having fun? When Sachin Tendulkar is playing cricket, is he enjoying himself, having fun, or is he earning money? When Amitabh Bachchan is acting, is he trying to earn his livelihood, or is he having the greatest fun in his life? What? If they can have fun, why can't you?
Super, sir. Super, sir.
If
They're
I
very
can
like that.
add, I don't know, we are trying to add, and we can move to the next question.
Yes, thank you, sir. Super, sir. Now, I think Anu, also, you put a question in the chat box. Maybe since you are there, would you like to address this question to the speakers? Anu, over to you. You are unmuted. You are not audible, Anu. No, not audible. Achha, while we fix, we'll fix your audio, then we'll get back to you.
No, let's go to the next question, because I think we can go to another topic.
Yeah, by the time we go to the next one. There's a question coming from Mr. Tyagarajan, Ponds leader. He says, can the leaders of business, after they superannuate, get into the roles of governance? Politics and administration of school bodies, given the current career span of politicians, they reach at their pinnacles in mid-70s. Can the retiring leaders from the corporate organization pursue any such career line? If this is possible, why leaders are not doing this? Can we build a better political base for the modern India? Would like to
good idea. And I think definitely there are societies where this is happening. In the UK, it happens quite a lot. In the US, it happens quite a lot. A lot of the presidents, including the current president, like him or not, he's a retired businessman. And it happens quite a lot. In India, however, our politics tend to be shaped a lot by caste and religion. And it's not normal, it's not impossible, it's not normal to find professionals entering that space unless they do so with the solid backing of an existing political organization, like Dr. Manmohan Singh entered, or today you have the Foreign Secretary Jaishankar. You know, the professionals are entering, but with a solid political backing, because they on their own cannot play this caste money criminal game. But if political parties are smart enough to bring these people in, they can add a lot of value well into their 60s, 70s, and 80s.
A lot of, Anu, are you okay now? Would you like to try?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, perfect now. Please
Okay,
go ahead
so
with your question.
yeah, thank you. So Nandu, I want to ask you a question. I think a lot of the unhappiness that happens post 60 is because you let go of a position of authority. Whereas if we learn to distinguish between authority and leadership, right, which is basically how do I become the best at something that I truly care about? And therefore, how do I show the way to the world in that particular field? Then there is a lot of scope for much happiness, regardless of where you are in the system. You can be the best chef in the world, the best server in an ashram in the world. And if you choose that one potential that you haven't used, so that you don't go to your grave saying, I haven't used my potential, then you can actually learn to lead without necessarily having all the trappings of authority that you have become so attached to. Any comments?
I completely agree with you, Anu. Indeed, if you look at the various levels of leadership, starting from basic authority-driven, where we try to act like a boss. I believe our goal really should be to get to the servant leadership concept, the level 5 leadership. And that's really all about the mastery of what you are doing and leading. Lao Tzu says famously, when the master leads, the people are hardly aware he exists. And they say, we did it ourselves. Yep. So that's the kind of mastery you're talking about. I completely agree with you. And that's why the motivation of when you enter the leadership position is very important. If you enter it with a scarcity mindset, you enter it to prove how great I am and how everybody else needs me. If you enter it with an abundance mindset, you say, how can I unlock the potential in everybody around here? And that is my role. And that's a completely different approach of how you approach. So, I at a philosophical level, and I've said this before, including on the Ponds group, I think we are all given success as a test.
Yep.
If you're able, and many of us get sucked into that ego-driven scarcity mindset, where I am CEO and I'll talk to you if you're a CEO. And if you're not at my level and you're not a CEO, then yeah, okay, yeah, fine. Yeah. Whereas if you are truly able to move to the abundance mindset and invest in developing people, then you keep the humility to learn from everybody and be challenged by everybody. Very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, and brilliant answer. Thank you.
So there's a question from Mr. Venkateshwaran is again, any well thought out plan can go off track when any black swan events take place. In India, with no worthwhile social security post-retirement, it can shatter the most, affecting the mental health. Suggestion how to handle such a situation. With relevant, another question has come from YouTube viewer is, all plans are okay with the present pandemic, and especially the senior citizens, they have to handle themselves quite carefully with the thing what's happening at that level, above 60. And how do you plan such a situation now? Unfortunate activity like what the viewer asked.
I think Mr. Pandit is well placed. He talked about financial planning, so he's the right person for this.
I think, yeah, something like this pandemic can throw everybody out of gear. And some of your best plans can be completely shattered. The key thing is to rethink your entire premise and come up with solutions which are completely out of the box. I've seen several examples. This is not exactly about retirement planning, but some of the examples where people have shifted their entire set of activities to online activities, from moving from what they were doing, an in-person interaction kind of activities, to completely online. So they have reinvented themselves, rediscovered their own capabilities. And I think that is what is needed. I think, as they say, every challenge has an opportunity within it. I think that's, I don't know if I've answered SR's Katraman's questions correctly, but Venkateshwaran's questions sufficiently. But that's what I think.
Would like to add on to what Mr. Pandit said?
Sorry?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Balram, yeah.
Nandu, please go ahead.
Nandu, you please. Nandu, please.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. An event like the current one and the related pressure on pension funds all over the world is, look, this crisis is the biggest crisis humanity has faced probably in 100 years. It is going to stress and strain everybody. So for everybody, look at your expenses. And this includes companies, universities, SMEs, startups, and individuals. Cut your expenses to something that you can really manage and sustain for a long term. That's number one, first, most important. And number two, therefore, marshal your financial planning in a careful way. And number three, don't be afraid to ask for help, because within your social circle and network, there will be a lot of people who will value you as a person and will be able to help by sharing what they have, not by charity, but by helping out and taking some load off you. So that's all I can suggest. And sorry, and one last thing, be creative. Even in today's scenario, look for ways to actually go out and create earning opportunities. I'll give you the story of this personal trainer from Gurgaon. So a personal trainer at a gym, he was training in a gym. All gyms closed, and they're still closed 4 months after the gyms closed. So he went online and he started teaching people online, because they don't have equipment at home, floor exercises. So he got 1,200 people to sign up. First 1 month, he did it free. Then he said, I'm going to start charging you 2,000 rupees per month for a 1 hour per day throughout the month session. Everybody signed up. So this personal trainer now is earning some 26 lakhs a month which is far greater than what he would have earned had he been the trainer in the gym, because he took the initiative to try a new business model with his same skills. He works 1 hour a day, 1 hour a day. I've heard from my friends, Sitaram told me about yoga teachers in Bangalore who've gone online, and suddenly they've discovered they have students in San Francisco and Dubai and Singapore who find the fees they charge is like the price of a Starbucks coffee. So it's very easy for them. So, every disruption brings opportunities. And if you are really enjoying something you do and you're really good at it, look for these opportunities. There will be opportunities to make money. Don't give it away free, because if you give it away free, nobody will value it.
There's also a question, why don't we have many more Sam Petrodas and Nandan Nilekani stepping into nation building from leadership careers? You've got a number of people like that. Why it's not happening?
What is nation building? I believe, Group Captain, what we are doing through this venue of MMA, which is helping build the next generation of managers and leaders and sharing, this is nation building. Nation building is not only going out and getting into politics and inventing a new technology. Helping one person is nation building. Inspiring a generation is nation building. So, I think, Group Captain, you're doing an outstanding job here.
I totally agree. I think nation building is not just one activity. It is a series of activities, a number of activities where it could be education, it could be basic school education or higher education, or even, as Nandu correctly said, building management capability and enhancing management knowledge of managers across through associations like MMA. Absolutely.
I'm able to do that because great support what I get from some of the past presidents like Mr. Balraman and many more like you, sir. At one of the turning point in MMA, I can firmly say is our partnership with Ponds Veterans and Fragrance of Business series, which has come. We're able to bring in some outstanding thought leaders to come and speak on this platform, which would add tremendous value. Now with the digital thing, you must have seen our magazine. All that speaks what you have done. I'll make sure that it reaches to as many thousands of people as they reach through the media of social media. Mr. Balraman, I think we have come to the end, as you said, till about 7:45. You gave a permission to extend till about another 15 minutes. We are now 7:41. Maybe would like to give a concluding remarks before you close the session, sir. Unless
if there are questions, we can continue. Otherwise, we close.
No, sir. Most of the things are only comments and observations, actually. And many questions are regarding the finance. How do I manage finance? How do I do investment? And those things are not our focus today. Our focus is how you reorient yourself and so that's why I not put those questions, actually. They want to say, how do you invest and where do you invest? How do you earn money?
Those things. Talking as Pandit talk, we need to provide some advice on retirement financial planning, which we will definitely look for people from within ourselves. Even somebody like S.R. Venkateshwaran can do that. He's an expert in finance and accounting. He does it for everybody else. Why not for us? Well, as I said in the beginning, this is leading to a much bigger effort to gather skills, expertise, experience, talent, and an intention to help in nation building, and a willingness to contribute in nation building. And we propose to set up a website in MMA using the vehicle of MMA. We will find people who want to use this talent, and we will engage the group that wants to engage. And we will see whether there can be some monetary compensation in that as we go along. So that is our plan. So an outstanding job by Pandit and Nand Kishore, extremely well done. And may I thank them very warmly for doing this. And Group Captain, thank you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Thank you.
Any closing remarks, Nandu? Anything from your side?
No, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And Mr. Balram and the Group Captain, Mr. Pandit, and all the viewers and participants. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you very
listening.
much.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, viewers. I think we had more than 1,100 viewers who watched this program. And we also seen that around 650 people are logged in from MMA webcast and our local Zoom. So it clearly indicates the people who are more professionals are logged in this, because this is which interest to them. That's why otherwise normally we have a huge number of viewers on YouTube and Facebook, which is not that much on today's thing. It's clearly indicate a lot of professionals who are interested in today's topic, and we'll get to know more feedback. I'll be able to share with you later. Thanks so much. I think to start comments with Mr. Venkatesan shared with us, Venkatraman shared with us, the Sanskrit, learning Sanskrit is an outstanding thing, and there are plenty of opportunity for to do that, and more time with your family. Balraman, you really set the tone by putting the discussion. The mind is to be young, body should be keep young, and keep doing something where nobody is doing the aging, and you are continue to be that what you are. And Nandak, as usual, he said so many things you brought it out, which is very, very important. The most important thing of the Christian letter, and also Ike guy, and number of other things where you mentioned, which is very, very important. And similarly, Mr. Pandit, your point of thing, which is really available for many of things, how to transit from your retired life to normal life, and the concept of MBA is very, very important, what Nandakishore said. It has been a fascinating evening, and especially for me, I also learned a lot how you can do, because why only 50? I say this topic, what you spoke, is even very, very important, because I connected with a large number of people who are above 70. You can start a new career after 70. All these 20 years you have wasted, get back to the normalcy, and I think this will rekindle that thought process of many, not only above 50, many 70 is going to come forward. As Mr. Balraman said, we'll reach out with our plans, how to collect these people, how to get this pool of excellent talent available in the society to come together and add value to the society. Thank you so much for you, and thanks so much viewers who have watched this program live on YouTube, Facebook, and webinar. This talk is available next few months in our website and other forums. We'll connect with as many people as possible so that it adds tremendous value. Thanks, Mr. Nandakishore. Thanks, Mr. Pandit. Thank you, Mr. Balraman, for facilitating this great talk this evening. Brilliant concept and brilliant, outstanding insight for many people to take away. Thank you so much, and good night, and stay safe till we meet again. Bye-bye, and good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.